Hi guys, a few days ago, the leader of the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch, told reporters that her party had made a number of mistakes, and that was the reason why the public lost trust in them and kicked them out at the last election. Now, during her speech, she brought up the issue of Brexit and admitted that her party didn't have a plan. Badenoch was and still is a Brexit supporter, so it was interesting to hear from another Brexiteer, Priti Patel, try to counter the idea that the Tories didn't have a plan for leaving the EU. Embarrassing stuff. Have a listen to this.
Your leader, Kemi Badenoch, said this week that there was no plan for how to make Brexit work. You were one of the leading advocates for vote leave. Do you think you should apologise? She says that you didn't have a plan.
Well, first of all, we had plans around Brexit. You will remember the Withdrawal Act. You will also remember, Laura, as the British people will as well, the British public, the acts of parliament that went through because we had to legislate, first of all, to start the Brexit process going forward.
But Kemi Badenoch says you didn't have a plan. She's your leader now. She said that the Brexiteers didn't have enough of a plan to make it happen.
There's a distinction. There's a distinction between saying we didn't have a plan to actually put in process the legislation that led to the enacting Brexit. So there's a distinction between the two. So in terms of long-term sustainable proposals, Kemi is right to recognise that clearly, wider plans needed to be put in place.
Who's lying here? Is it Kemi Badenoch or is it Priti Patel? Well, I actually think it's Priti Patel because what Patel is talking about here is after the referendum. What Kemi Badenoch is talking about is before the referendum. Was there a plan put in place before the referendum? Of course not. That's why a plan had to be put in place after the referendum because there was no plan beforehand. And what was that plan? Well, there wasn't a plan until they realised, actually, we won this thing. We didn't plan to win it, but now we've won it. Now what do we do? That's why there was such a fiasco over the triggering of Article 50 and then the withdrawal agreement and then the trade deal with the European Union, the TCA. Priti Patel is suggesting, we had a plan to leave. No, there was no plan to leave. There was no plan. What was going to happen? Whenever Brexiteers were asked about this, they would stop talking about anything that would happen after the referendum. Unless it was sunlit uplands and everything would be great. But there was no plan for what would happen. There was no economic plan. There was no political plan. There was no plan when it came to how do we deal with the European Union now that when we leave. There was no talk about Northern Ireland, for example. Northern Ireland was brought up by people in the Republic of Ireland within the EU. Some people in Great Britain brought it up, but it was shut down. It was ignored. The response was stop scaremongering. It will be fine. Don't talk about Northern Ireland. How many times was Nigel Farage ever asked about Northern Ireland? I can't even find a video. I honestly can't find a video, a clip where Nigel Farage was on Newsnight, on Question Time, on everything, on a constant basis, on a continuous basis, but he was never asked, as far as I can see, about Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland, of course, is an integral part of the Brexit process. Now, was there a plan? Of course there was no plan, because they didn't think that they were going to win. But also, they didn't want to talk about what would happen post-Brexit, because then they would actually have to start explaining things. So the different factions that supported the idea of leaving the European Union decided, let's not talk about what comes after Brexit, let's just talk about why it's important that we need to leave. Let's talk about the problems of the EU, let's talk about the problems of membership of the EU, let's talk about how things... sunlit uplands and everything will be great after, but don't go into any detail. Don't talk about what sort of relationship we're going to have with the EU, the cost of leaving. Don't talk about any of these things, because as soon as we start talking about it, then we're going to turn people off. And we don't want that. We want to be dishonest. We don't want to be transparent. And we certainly don't want the public understanding the true consequences of leaving the EU. So there was no plan. If there was a plan, perhaps Priti Patel can point it out to us. She can't because there was none. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.